Well, folks, it looks like the PBO strikes again in bringing down Stephen Guilbeault and his crazy rhetoric. Earlier last year, we had him prove that 8 out of 10 people actually get less money from the carbon tax. But just yesterday, a new report came out on the emissions cap for oil and gas, and this was a brief little video on that.
Alberta's Premier and Environment Minister say a new report shows Ottawa's proposed emissions cap is unconstitutional and bad for the economy. The Parliamentary Budget Office released its analysis of the proposed emissions cap today. It says implementing the cap by 2032 could see a reduction in Canada's gross domestic product. It also says even with the cap, production in the oil sands could increase by about 11%. When asked today, the Environment Minister says other analysis disagrees.
We have not only done our own analysis, there is industry analysis, and of course independent analysis, all confirming that this emissions cap is absolutely a cap on production. It will curtail energy production. It will impact Canada's GDP, and it of course will impact tens of thousands of jobs, which especially at a time like this is completely and utterly unacceptable.
The PBO report confirms there could be up to 54,000 job losses as a result of putting in the cap. It also says that its report does not account for any of the potential benefits of reducing Canada's emissions.
Now, interestingly enough, I'm not sure why CTV did this, but they actually cut out a portion of what Rebecca Schultz was saying there at the end, talking about how Stephen Guilbeault needs to resign, and this is the clip here.
We have not only done our own analysis, there is industry analysis, and of course independent analysis, all confirming that this emissions cap is absolutely a cap on production. It will curtail energy production. It will impact Canada's GDP, and it of course will impact tens of thousands of jobs, which especially at a time like this is completely and utterly unacceptable. The thing is Minister Guilbeault has known this all along. He lied to Canadians and he needs to resign.
Now, she didn't only say it on air, she also posted this on Twitter, where she wrote, for months, Stephen Guilbeault has said that his oil and gas cap would not cut production. Today, the PBO office exposed him for what he is, a liar. Stephen Guilbeault must resign. And this actually was following a tweet that Danielle Smith put out, which was a much longer one, talking about, for years, the province's businesses and industry leaders, along with numerous independent reports, have found that the federal government's proposed oil and gas emissions cap will hurt Canadians, damage our economy, and cost jobs. Over and over, the federal government has dismissed and ignored these concerns. Now the PBO scathing analysis shows beyond a doubt that the cap will hurt Canadians. It will cut oil and gas production by 5% and over 245,000 barrels a day. It will eliminate 54,400 jobs from Canada's economy and cut $20 billion from our GDP by 2032, all while global emissions increase at the same time. Now, she goes on to Anon. She shows a little graph here. And as I mentioned, this is coming from the PBO himself, the Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer. He released this yesterday, the impact assessment of oil and gas emissions cap. And they actually based this report off of the proposal from the government, which was the emissions reduction plan, clear air, strong economy. And as you could expect, this is the plan itself. And none other than Mr. Stephen Guilbeault here. He gave his forward to this. But as Danielle Smith's post says, the evidence is clear. The federal government's proposed emissions cap is unconstitutional, bad for the economy, and bad for Canadians. We urge the next elected prime minister to abandon this extreme and ideological cap. It has never been clearer that we must grow and expand our energy sector as part of uniting Canada and ensuring a strong and independent economy. And this is what we keep hearing about, is everyone wants to now look into doing pipelines, especially the Liberals, who are very opposed to pipelines. And Mark Carney himself, this will be interesting because if you don't remember, he actually was the UN special convoy for climate change, Mr. Mark Carney himself. Investing in net zero, he's talked about how the companies who do change their ways will be rewarded, and the ones that don't, they will continue to be punished.
Climate change is an existential threat. We all recognize that. There's increasing urgency around that. But the converse of that, the flip side of that is if you're taking steps, making investments, coming up with new technologies, changing the way you do business, all in service of reducing and eliminating that threat, you're creating value. And what we have seen increasingly, spurred initially by the Sustainable Development Goals, accelerated with Paris, and then through social movements and others and governments acting, is society is putting tremendous value on achieving net zero. So the companies and those who invest in them and lend to them, who are part of the solution, will be rewarded. But those who are lagging behind and are still part of the problem will be punished.
And I mean, he's talked about this in recent interviews, saying that the big polluters are the ones who are going to be paying more if they don't buy these carbon credits that he wants to implement. And Stephen Guilbeault, he's been questioned on how come you're supporting this guy when you said that you would potentially resign if they got rid of the carbon tax for the consumers. He's gone on to say, oh, well, we have multiple different outlets. We're not just a one-trick pony.
Mr. Guilbeault, do you expect Carney to get rid of the consumer carbon tax before he calls an election?
Well, he said yesterday that he wanted to get rid of it. We're looking into how that could be done and how rapidly it can be done.
Do you expect this to happen, though, before the election is called?
As I said, we're looking into it. I don't have like a time to give you. We're looking into different options. Do we need to change legislation? Can we go the regulatory route? Like, what are the options? And I don't have an answer for you yet.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I mean, he said that he wanted, for example, to work on the industrial carbon pricing system that gives us 3 times more emission reduction. So make sure that big polluters do their fair share when it comes to reducing emissions. And you should remember that our climate change plan doesn't rest on 1 or 2 measures. It's more than 100 measures that we've deployed over the years that, for the first time in our history, is resulting in emissions going down while the economy is going up. It's never happened before. So the plan is working, and we will find a solution to that particular issue. Thank you. Yes.
Which, to me, if that was the case, they would not have been pushing the carbon tax as hard as they would. But the most interesting thing is, as I mentioned, this UN Special Envoy gentleman here, this report just came out. The Amazon rainforest has been felled to build a road for the climate summit. So this report came out saying a new 4-lane highway cutting through tens of thousands of acres of protected Amazon rainforest is being built for the COP30 climate summit in the Brazilian city of Belém. It aims to ease traffic to the city, which will host more than 50,000 people, including world leaders, at the conference in November later this year. Now, I will be very interested to see if Mr. UN Special Climate Envoy guy is going to be there, because it says Brazil clears 8 miles of Amazon rainforest to make space for the UN climate conference. Brazil ruins the environment to make it easier to host a conference about solving climate change. Like, you can't make this up, folks. Only these elite, corrupt individuals would harp on us to bring down our carbon footprint. Jet set around everywhere, like I showed you in the last video, where Carney went from Ottawa to Toronto, Toronto to Hamilton, Hamilton back to Ottawa, just on a trip for his own self there. And these guys go on and on about the planet and how much it's burning and the climate change, yet something that helps reduce CO2 and everything that they talk about, like trees, like the rainforest, they're willing to clear cut 8 miles of it so that they have easier access to host this conference of theirs. How about don't do it in Brazil, where the rainforest is? Like, in this report, it states, when we get together in the Brazilian Amazon in November, we must listen to the latest science and reevaluate the extraordinary role already played by forests and the people who preserve and rely on them. How are you doing that when you're clear cutting 8 miles, a 4-lane highway for a conference? That makes no sense. And here's just some video that I found on this incident. Now, listen, folks, I care as much as everyone else for the future of my kids, that they have a planet to enjoy and play and live in, and the ability to go outside. But these hypocrites cannot continue just fear mongering everybody, saying that we are the problem when it's these elite idiots that are doing all these things like Davos. There was that Rebel News, a clip from how many years ago, maybe 2 years ago, where they're questioning Mark Carney about this, and he just goes, "Oh, drop it."
How do you justify how does the UN climate envoy justify the massive carbon footprint here today to set this up, this fake city for a week event? How did you get here? Did you fly? You walked?
Yeah.
Did you come on a private jet?
Of course not.
No, so how do you justify this? Look at all of this. For 1 week event, the carbon footprint is huge. Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical?
Oh, drop it.
No?
Drop it.
Like, a very valid question gets proposed to you, and your answer is drop it. And this is a big issue that Mark Carney is going to be having going forward. There's been reports on this saying how he's picking up all of the bad habits of being a so-called politician, where he's been caught lying. He doesn't answer questions. Just take a look from this little video. This gentleman used to work for Pierre Trudeau in the Liberal government.
Hear from Patrick Gossage. He was Pierre Elliott Trudeau's press secretary when the Liberal Party was the Liberal Party. And he joins me right now because I want to put the question to you. Mr. Carney, Prime Minister, I'll put this to you. He is disavowing everything he has said and stood for over the last 10 years. Carbon tax, pipelines, the greening. I'm sure he's still for a cleaner earth, as is everybody. Can a man survive as Prime Minister? Can he be elected if everybody's saying, well, you don't stand for anything?
And I'm not sure he's the guy to do it. We can only pray that he's learning politics, as he keeps saying. And, he's learning the bad part of politics, like dissembling, lying, not doing interviews, hiding. I don't know. I think things are going to catch up with him.
And this is also something that we saw yesterday when he was in Hamilton, did his little press conference, and then just jumped in the car and drove off. Didn't do any media, didn't talk to reporters. He's a sneaky, slimy guy. We need to get rid of him. Election, I believe, or the transfer of power is happening tomorrow, I believe. Friday? Yeah, tomorrow. Hopefully then after that, we get the election that we're all waiting for, and we boot this guy out. Because we can't have things continue the way that they're going, and people need to wake up. But as always, love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.